In the singles playbook, you've got hero, that is you, and you've got villain, that is your opponent. And there are 4 ways you can stress villain. And by stress, I mean you get them off balance so that they're leaning in one direction or another when they are hitting a shot. And the reason you want to do that is because when they're leaning, when they are off balance, they are less likely to hurt you, they're more likely to hit short, and they're more likely to make an outright error. So there are 4 ways that you can stress villain and get them off balance. The first is you can stretch them off the court, so they'd be leaning in one direction to hit a shot. The second is you can push them back, so now they're leaning back to hit a shot. That's particularly effective on the backhand side. The third is you can pull them into the court, so they're moving forward, they're leaning forward to hit a shot, probably gonna pop that up. And then the last one that is not written up here, but you can see it on the diagram, is you hit behind somebody. So if I were the villain and I'm moving this way, but you hit behind me, then I'm off balance and reaching for the shot. So again, those are the 4 ways you can stress villain, and these are the ingredients we're gonna use for all the plays in the playbook. Now, if you flip through the playbook already, you've probably noticed that there are some of the same plays, but for different villains. So you might kind of say, well, I've already seen this one, I don't need to watch it again. Well, that's not the case, because for each villain, whether we push back or stretch off the court or pull in, it's going to be a little bit different, right? Every single villain has strengths and weaknesses, so we're going to avoid some stuff against, say, the pusher that we would not avoid against the aggressive baseliner. So again, even if you've seen, let's say, serve +1 against the pusher, well, it's going to be a little bit different. The nuances are going to be different against the aggressive baseliner. So that's critical to understand. But again, 4 ways you're going to be stressing villain, 4 ingredients for all the plays that you're going to see in the singles playbook. Court positioning and geometry. So over the next couple pages, we're going to be building a layer cake of strategy that's going to show us why plays work. And this is super cool because you'll start to see the pros doing this. And more importantly, you're going to know how to do it at your level. So the first thing we want to talk about is court geometry. The tennis court from baseline to baseline is 78 feet. And from single sideline to single sideline, it's 27 feet. And thanks to our good buddy Pythagoras, we know that from corner to corner, it's 82.5 feet. Now the net is 3 feet in the middle and 3.5 feet at the single sideline. And all this together simply means that hitting cross court is safer than hitting down the line. So how much riskier is it going down the line? Well, the net is higher, so obviously got to hit a little bit higher, aim higher to clear the net, but then the ball could sail long, and you could actually hit that thing 4.5 feet out, and that ball would still be in if you had gone cross court instead. And this isn't even counting the fact that you could just hit the ball wide. So there's a lot of ways you can miss going down the line that simply aren't there when you go cross court. And your coach has probably said that to you a bunch, right? Hit the ball cross court, it's safer than hitting down the line. So you probably already knew that, but there are plenty of situations when you should go down the line. And we'll talk about those later in the playbook, but the whole point here is simply understanding safer cross court, riskier down the line, and then the decisions we're gonna make on when we should go down the line are simply gonna be based on the reward. Because sometimes it's a great idea to go down the line, but we'll talk about those rewards a little bit later on in the playbook. So the next layer is court positioning. Simply put, where do we stand during a rally? Now, a lot of players have been taught to recover back to the middle of the court regardless of where they've hit the ball. So that's a big mistake. The time you do want to do it is, let's say hero down here and villain up here are just rallying back and forth through the middle of the court. Well, then you do want to come back to the middle. And the reason for that is we're trying to recover to the middle of the max angles that your opponent can create, right? So if we're hero down here, we've hit through the middle of the court. So based on the geometry, they can go kind of off the court over here, off the court over here. So now we are correctly positioned in the middle of those max angles. But let's say that hero hits the ball over here. Now villain's max angles change a little bit. The down the line, that's still the max angle over here, but villain now has an angle they can create off the court like that. So when the ball's over here, then hero would want to recover over here to take this into account, right? And after villain hits, let's say villain puts the ball over here and hero goes over to get it, then villain would want to recover to that positioning point because the max angle that hero could create now is like that. It's off the court this way, but then it's through the court going down the line. And then obviously if we reversed it, if hero and villain were rallying cross court, then the positioning point for hero would be a couple of feet to the left of the center hash mark, and the recovery point for villain would be a couple feet to the right of the center hash mark. So that is how court positioning works. There's basically 3 points you want to recover to when you're rallying through the middle of the court. You recover to the middle of the court. When you're rallying cross court, let's say for two righties, it would be forehand to forehand. Then you're recovering a couple feet to the right of the center. And then when you're rallying backhand to backhand, you would recover a couple feet to the left of the center hash mark. Sword and the shield. So this is one of the most important concepts you need to understand. And simply put, the sword is your strength. That's what you attack with. And the shield is your weakness. That's what you defend with. That's what kind of keeps you in the fight, right? But you're trying to set that sword up later in the shot. Now, what you need to do is understand not only which side your sword and your shield is on, and right now it's drawn for a right-hander because most righties, their forehands tend to be the stronger shot and their backhand tends to be the weaker shot. But you also need to understand it for villain. And this is also drawn for a righty, assuming the forehand is the stronger shot and the backhand is the weaker shot. So what you need to understand is the matchup, right? Your sword and shield, villain's sword and shield. And if you flip to the southpaw section later, you're gonna see that up here it's flipped. The shield is over here, the sword is over here, but you could also be facing an opponent who is right-handed but has a better backhand. So then it would be the same configuration as a southpaw, and maybe you as a righty actually have a better backhand than forehand, then the configuration would be different as well. But we're gonna talk about it. Two righties right now, stronger forehands, weaker backhands. So the swords are on the diagonal, the shields are on the diagonal. And again, top level, this matchup is absolutely critical to understand because as you use a play to construct a point, you're trying to end up in a situation where your strength is going to villain's weakness. So it's gonna be sword versus shield. Okay, so through the magic of video editing, I have added the court positioning points back, I've added the geometry back, I've manifested a tennis ball, because I want to illustrate a very common mistake that rec players tend to make, and that is going sword at the shield, forehand at the backhand, because we're like, oh my gosh, I need to attack villain's backhand with my best shot. So in a cross-court rally right here, we've got the positioning points. You'd be standing here, villain's up there. You're going sword to sword. And then let's say you want to go down the line and attack villain's shield. Well, we've just talked about in the previous videos how that is much riskier. You're more likely to make a mistake. But what often happens is you hit a shot that's not great, villain gets it, and then look at what has happened. You now have 82 and a half feet for villain to hit into, so safest shot, and you're way out of position because when villain hits here, you need to be there when villain's making contact for you to have the entire court covered. So now you are wildly out of position, and this is a point you are probably going to lose. So just wanted to bring this up briefly because incredibly common mistake, and we can see how in this situation, the risk is often not worth it going down the line, but this is something people do all the time. So in the next couple videos, we'll talk about a safe time for sword to go at shield. Inside and outside ground strokes, the next layer in our cake and a very important layer. So this term was coined by Paul Wardlaw, and what you can see up here is I've got little dash marks coming out of each player, and this represents the plane of the player's body. So literally I'm just drawing a line straight into the court because what we're looking for is whether or not the incoming ball is going to cross that plane or not before, in this case, hero hits the tennis ball. Now, an outside ground stroke is where the tennis ball is going to cross that plane and will be moving away from hero when hero hits it. And an inside ground stroke is where the ball does not cross that plane and is moving into hero when hero hits it. Now, the reason this distinction, the reason we have a difference between outside ground strokes and inside ground strokes is because inside ground strokes, where the ball does not cross that plane and is moving into hero, are way better than outside ground strokes, where the ball crosses the plane and is moving away from hero when hero hits it. Hero, I'm not going to get into all the physics right now, but hero has way more leverage over inside ground strokes, can hit them harder with more spin and more accuracy than they can when the ball is tailing away from them as an outside ground stroke. And if you want to see a parallel from another sport, look at baseball. So inside pitches, pitches that are coming into the batter when they hit. For right-handed batters, they hit almost all their home runs to left field because they can pull those pitches and they can generate a lot of power on those shots, on those hits. And it's much harder for them to kind of push the ball and steer it into right field, which would be an easier home run for a lefty where the ball comes in, they can turn on that, they got that leverage, can hit a lot of home runs to right field, but harder to push it into left field. And you can actually see when you watch a baseball game, the defense is going to shift around and cover different parts of the field based on whether they're facing a right-handed batter or a left-handed batter. And this concept applies exactly the same way in tennis. And let's talk about where hero can actually hit the tennis ball based on whether they're getting an inside or an outside ground stroke. And let's start with an outside ground stroke. So that ball is moving away from hero. It's crossed the plane. It's moving away from hero. So hero, in this case, actually can't really reasonably expect to be able to put the ball into this area of the court consistently. And what I've basically done is just taken the doubles alley and I've multiplied it. I've just created another one. This shot down the line is very, very difficult to get it in here and hit a quality shot as an outside ground stroke because hero has lost leverage over it because it's moving away. But if we have the shot coming like this instead, where it's an inside ground stroke, then hero would actually be able to hit the ball over here. They'd be able to reasonably put the ball over there and expect to be able to do it on a consistent basis, so they're not going to make a lot of mistakes. So if we remove this and put it back to an outside ground stroke, you can see another reason the down the line is can be a risky shot, depending on whether you're hitting an inside or an outside ground stroke. And if we actually turn this into a cross-court rally between hero and villain, well, the down the line for villain, got my markers mixed up, the down the line for villain in this case is not something that hero should really worry about it. So hero would not be defending this too much if hero has hit a cross-court shot that's a solid, cross-court shot that is an outside ground stroke for villain. It crosses the plane of the body and is moving away. So to come back to the baseball analogy, the defenses, the outfield, are shifting to the parts of the field where the ball is likely to go, and they're not really covering the parts of the field where the ball is less likely to go. And that's what we want to do as tennis players and how we want to cover the tennis court. We do not really want to cover the part of the court where the ball is less likely to go, and we do want to cover the parts of the court where it is likely to go, because as we're about to see in the next video, the red zone, that allows us to go on offense. The red zone. So this is a term that we stole from American football, and the red zone is the last 20 yards before the end zone. So if a team is able to get the football into the red zone, they are very likely to score, whether that means a field goal or a touchdown. Doesn't happen all the time, but they are very likely to put some points up on the board. So as that relates to us in tennis, if you can get yourself to the red zone, you are very likely to win the point. Doesn't mean you're going to win it every time, But if you get to this situation, you are very likely to win the point. So this is a goal we want to be after when we are using plays to construct a point. So here's the diagram we had in the last video where we were talking about inside and outside ground strokes. And we ended that video talking about how you want to give up certain parts of the tennis court. You don't really want to defend them. So let's take Hero over here. And let's say because he's hit a good shot over to Villain, it's an outside shield in this case, Hero decides to actually shift over a little bit. Doesn't have to worry about this. So Hero starts to move further and further into to the left into the shield corner. And now, exact same shot that Villain would hit back, but Villain has turned that outside ground stroke now into an inside ground stroke because it's not crossing the plane. It's moving into Hero now. So a couple things are happening. First of all, and probably most importantly, Hero has upgraded from a shield to the sword, right? Turned the backhand into the forehand. So now, if Hero decides to send this ball back cross court, Hero now has the sword versus the shield, right? So that's awesome. We're now going strength to weakness. But if we rewind a couple videos ago, you know how I talked about strength versus weakness? And it was a bad idea down the line because it was only 78 feet. And we talked about some positioning issues there. Well, now that's changed because now it's cross court. And we know that the cross court is 82 and a half feet going cross court there. So now we have the geometry working in our favor. So we've got strength versus weakness. We've now also got geometry in our favor in this case. We've got the inside ground stroke versus the outside ground stroke, which means Villain, we don't have to worry about this, but Hero, because it's an inside ground stroke, now can actually hit that ball down the line if Hero wants to. And we'll talk about that in the next play, the 2-1. But, oh, and the last point is that Hero is also correctly positioned. So Hero hits that shot, and then, you know, the correct positioning point is here, but if Hero actually hits a good shot, they can kind of hang out over here because they should expect that ball to come back cross court. So this is the red zone. So it's a combination of a couple factors, right? We've got an inside ground stroke for Hero versus an outside ground stroke. And not any inside ground stroke, it's a sword, right? The entire middle of the tennis court is now controlled by the sword. So that's the first thing. We've got the geometry in our favor. We're now going the longest part of the court, our sword versus the shield, and we have the entire court we want to hit, or we can hit into, while Villain cannot really reasonably pull this shot off down the line. So another way to think about it is Hero has a lot less court to defend than Villain does. So again, a situation where we are most likely to win the point. We're not always going to win it, but if we get here over and over and over, we're going to win the match. The 2-1. So this is the first play that we're going to share in the playbook, and it's sort of a universal play. Now, the name, the 2-1, was coined by my good buddy and fellow coach, Craig O'Shaughnessy. So what you're going to see as you flip through the playbook is whether you're playing a pusher, aggressive baseliner, all-court player, whatever, a lot of the plays you're going to be using end up with you in the red zone, and then we sort of leave it there. And the reason is because once you get to the red zone, this is the play you're going to use, regardless of who you are facing. So let's see how this play works. We are in the red zone, we are in the driver's seat, and the first shot we want to hit is a sword that is going to push Villain back. So you want to hit through the court. This would be a shot that looks like this. It pushes back. You want Villain to move back to get this thing. Now, the next shot, Villain's going to hit this ball defensively back cross court. So the next sword that you hit is one that's going to stretch off the court. So Villain's back here. Now they got to move over here to get to that shot. And the reason we want to push back first and then stretch wide is because if Villain was right here and you tried to stretch off the court first, they would only have to go maybe here to get to that ball. but by pushing back first, then they've got a lot more court that they have to cover, right? They've got like that much more court they need to cover. And then the shield, of course, is back cross court, and it's going to be an inside sword for Hero, and now Hero can just aim safely into the open court there, right? So it's the inside ground stroke, it's the better shot, the sword. So even though it is down the line, now we've gotten to that situation where, hey, the reward for going down the line is pretty good. Villain is so far off the court, this is probably going to be an outright winner. Even if it's not, it's probably going to be an error or some kind of short ball where the point will be over a shot later. So this is how you would use the 2-1 to take advantage of the red zone situation. So the 2 is a combination of pushing back and then stretching off the court, and then the 1 is the shot into the open court that is going to end the point. Serving against the pusher, we want to use serve +1. And in the deuce court, what that means is the first serve is going to be a wide serve. You want to stretch the pusher off of the court. You're looking for a ball back cross court. You might even cheat over to the middle of the court a little bit, try and turn as many returns into swords as possible. Now, one option with serve +1 is to hit straight through the court and try and push the opponent back. But with a pusher, we don't want to do that. We don't want to push him back into his trench because that's where he wants to go. Then he's going to moonball that ball back at us. So instead, what we want to do with this next shot is stretch off the court, right? You want the pusher on the dead run. You want them hugging the baseline as much as possible. And after this shot, then you are going to come to net. Now, the pusher, remember, doesn't have amazing technique, isn't going to blow you away with amazing groundies. So this is going to be a weak passing shot, but more likely what is going to be is a weak lob. So if you get to the correct positioning point, which is right here, you're probably just going to get some kind of a weak lob here, and then that becomes an easy overhead into the open court that you don't have to do much with. Let's move on to the ad court, and we're going to do the exact same thing. The serve is going to stretch Villain off the court to the backhand. You're now going to hold your position because cross-court shots you want coming into the sword. You might even slide over a little bit. And then your next shot is going to be a stretch off the court for the same reasons we discussed in the deuce court. And then you're going to come to net and be looking for either a weak lob or some kind of a passing shot that you can volley into the open court. Rallying against the pusher, we're going to use a play called the modified Punisher. Now, the way the Punisher works is pretty straightforward. It's an aggressive play. You're trying to really attack from the baseline, and you want to create these imaginary sort of hash marks. Let's just say that they're basically halfway between the center hash mark and the single sideline on both sides. And anything in here, you are going down the line, right? You're hitting away from your opponent. So if it was a cross-court rally like this and you're hitting here, you would go down the line. If it's a cross-court rally like this, you would go down the line. But then if the ball gets outside this imaginary hash mark and you're over here, then you would want to send it cross-court because you're taking too much risk to go down the line. In this case, you're just, you're going to more likely to make an error. You're really out of position. So then you would want to keep it, play it safe and go cross court. These imaginary hash lines are totally up to you and your skill set. If your downline forehand, your downline sword is great, then maybe the hash mark would be here. But if your backhand's a little weaker, shield's a little weaker, then it might be there. It's just, like I said, totally dependent on your skill set. So you got these hash marks here. And here's how we're modifying this play against the pusher. So you're in trench, you're in your trenches, not the greatest situation, but here's how you make do. If the ball comes to your sword and you're in here, you are going to hit a shot over here that effectively would push the pusher back. I mean, the pusher's already in the trench, but it's a shot that's trying to be, a deep penetrating shot. But then if the ball comes to your shield over here, you're going to hit a shot that's short. That's going to pull the pusher out of the trench. You'd want it to be a slice, so you pull him forward. So the net effect is, once you pull them in like this, probably the ball is going to come back cross court. You now get the sword, which is that drive, and then you're pushing them back. So you're pushing them back on their shield. That's really tough. And then the next shot, you pull them in. So you've got this contrast here where you're pushing them back and you're pulling them in. You're pushing them back, you're pulling them in. And this is how you get the pusher to start coughing up short balls, stop hitting shots that keep you pinned back in your trench, and allow you to step forward and then take charge, eventually come to net and end the point. Approaching against the pusher, we want to use an approach play called the newt. So you've gotten a short ball, you are inside the baseline, and particularly on the shield, but also on the sword, you'd want to hit that newt, which is just a short, low slice down the middle of the court, but angled towards the shield over here, and you follow that guy to net. Now, you can see in the diagram that we've got the 1 yard line and the 2 yard line. And the 1 yard line is typically where you would stand when you're coming to net. But the 2 yard line is a little bit further back, a little bit closer to the service line. And you'd want to stand on this on the 2 yard line. And the reason why is pushers coming forward, it's that low ball, but pushers are just very inclined to try and lob you. So you want to play off a teeny bit, anticipating a lob so that you are in good position for the overhead. And if you notice that they try and pass you, they try and scoot the ball by, then you might come back to the, you might move forward to the 1 yard line. But again, pushers are going to try and get that ball over your head. So play off a little bit and just be set up for that overhead into the open court. Pushers approaching the net. Oh my gosh, what a rare occurrence. Pushers love to stay at the baseline, but hey, they do sometimes come to net. And when they do, they like to use a play called the bulldozer, where they're just gonna hit through the court and try and hit it deep because they don't have a lot of subtlety, they don't have angles. So they're just gonna try and hit through the court, keep you back, force you to come up with a good passing shot. So when they come over to your sword, you've got two options. The first option is you can use thread the needle. This is your standard passing shot. And if they're approaching cross court like this, you're going to have a window that you can thread the needle through. So that's one option. But if you aren't having a lot of success with this one, the other one you can use is the Big Dipper. This one works well off the sword, where you're generating more topspin, and it's back towards the approaching player, where you're trying to get it to dip down so that their next shot they have to pop up. Then you can close, and it should be an easy passing shot for you. Now, if the pusher is using the bulldozer to your shield, then options change a teeny bit. You can still use the thread the needle passing shot. A little bit tougher on the shield, but hey, a lot of folks do have that shot. So if you do, by all means use it. But the other one that's a great one to use, a lot of people don't use quite as often as they should, is the Hulk Smash. And this is where you just blast it right at the approaching player. You force them to come up with a good reflex volley. And a lot of times they won't. A lot of times they will pop it up and you will have an easy passing shot. And in this case, it'll probably be somewhere over here on your sword. Now you can see in the diagram, I've drawn the tennis ball basically on the center strap for the net. And what you want to do is basically aim, like that's where you want the ball to cross the net. And coming from your shield side, the ball is going to be tailing cross court at at the pusher's shield. That's where you want to get it. But the Hulk Smash is very imprecise. You're literally just ripping it. So if you just aim for the strap here, obviously you want to aim above it so it crosses the net. But if you do that, it's going to be tailing cross court and should go to the shield. So that would be the one I would use in lieu of the Big Dipper. It's harder to hit the Big Dipper off of the shield, which has less topspin. Ball's much more likely to sit up and be an easy volley for the approaching player. So I would replace that with the Hulk Smash, pressure him with pace, and force him to come up with goods. Serving in the deuce court against the counterpuncher, you want to use a play called the ankle breaker. And this is where you're going to serve out wide and stretch the counterpuncher off the court. and that leaves a lot of court exposed over here. So the, the counterpuncher is, like I said before, very good at covering the open court. They're going to be hustling this way. And on your next shot, which will be the sword, you want to hit behind, right? And you don't need to aim for, real close to the lines, just somewhere over here. The goal is simply to get, that's hilarious, is to get the counterpuncher to stop, turn around, and they're not going to be able to do much with this shot. You would slide over, hit the next ball into the open court like this. And when you've done that, you continue to slide over. You've now set up the red zone, and that's when you can transition to the 2-1. Serving in the ad court is serve +1. You're going to serve out wide. You're going to stretch the counterpuncher off the court. It's the same deal. They've got all this court to cover over here. So when they start moving this way, your next shot, you've slid over, and you're going to hit this ball behind back at the shield. And so Villain's going to have to stop, turn around. This, of course, would be an outside ground stroke for them, and you have gotten yourself into the red zone. Returning against the counterpuncher in the deuce court, you want to use a play called the ankle sprain. So with the return, you're going to go right back at the counterpuncher. You're trying to push him back, and what you want to do is aim for the side, whether it's the sword or the shield, with the biggest backswing. Because when someone's on the baseline, they're backing up and they don't have as much time as normal, you actually want to go at the side that has the bigger backswing. You can rush them a little bit. That sets up an easier second shot. So after you hit that return, you want to slide into the middle of the court. You're looking to hit as many swords as possible. And the counterpuncher is going to expect the ball like he normally does in the open court. So your next shot, you will go behind, right? And so, so you want to get the counterpuncher changing direction. Because you're returning and not serving, it's not going to be as extreme a change of direction, right? When you're serving and you get them really off the court, then they really have to stop and turn around. So that's why we call this the ankle sprain versus the ankle breaker. And then the next shot, hopefully, is through the middle. You're going to slide over. This is when you take it into the open court. You continue to slide over, and you've set yourself up in the red zone. In the ad court, you're using return +1. So as much as you can generate an angle on the return, that is ideal. You want to stretch Villain, the counterpuncher, as far off the court as possible so that they have as much open court to cover as possible. It also makes it more likely that the ball is going to come back diagonally towards you. So the more you angle that return, the more you can kind of hold your position. If you hit it more through the middle, then you probably have to slide further into the court to honor the down the line. The better the angle you get, the less you got to do that. And then the next shot for you is going to be, an inside sword, and you're just going to take that right back at the counterpuncher's backhand. The shield, hopefully they turn around so they're a little off balance, but regardless, you're going to be in the red zone with that 1-2 shot combination. Rallying against the counterpuncher, one of the plays you can use is Roger Federer's signature play. It's called the Swiss Watch, and this is a play you would use when you find yourself in a shield-to-shield shield rally with the counterpuncher. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to hit a slice, and what you're looking to do is pull the counterpuncher forward into the court. Now this, of course, is an outside ground stroke. You're not worried about this ball coming down the line, particularly because it's lower, right? The slice stays low. So you're going to expect that ball back cross court. And then the next backhand, the next shield you hit is going to be a topspin drive. Because what you want to do is now push the counterpuncher back in the court. And we all know that when we're moving back to hit a backhand, that is just a really tough shot. Arguably the toughest shot to pull off consistently in tennis. So we're still not worried about the down the line. That's still an outside ground stroke. They're moving back. This isn't going to happen. The ball is going to come back through the middle of the court. So you can see in the third diagram, Hiro wants to slide over a little bit and just set up a sword. You know, the stronger shot, you come back with that last shot in the diagram back at the shield, and that of course has gotten you to the red zone. Rallying against the counterpuncher. So one of the other plays you can use is trench warfare. Now, a counterpuncher, the number one way they counterpunch and hurt you is when you leave a ball hanging and they can hit into the open court. That's why home base is the counterpuncher's favorite play. So if you were in a cross-court rally here and then you left a ball hanging here, they could take it into the open court and now you are on the run and you get over there, they've shifted over, you hit a ball there, they hit into the open court, point's gonna be over pretty quick. So trench warfare prevents the counterpuncher from counterpunching. They never have an opportunity to expose you from a court positioning standpoint. So the way trench warfare works is you got these imaginary trenches back here, and your goal is just to push the counterpuncher back there, kind of force them into the trench, you hang out in yours, and then from here, there's no angle for the counterpuncher to hurt you with, and the counterpuncher doesn't have big shots, right? They're not like the aggressive baseline. They're not gonna blow you off the court. So there's nothing they can do from back here to hurt you. So what you're gonna wanna do is just hit through the middle of the court, and you can angle it at the backhand side, the shield side, that tends to be weaker. And then what you're looking for is for the counterpuncher to actually not counterpunch, but actually take the first swing, right? So you want the counterpuncher to do what we call in trench warfare is opening the door. They give you an opportunity to kind of step in, right? To take the initiative. That's a term I learned from Craig O'Shaughnessy. So they're gonna hit over here and create an angle for you. You're gonna go outside of your trench. You're gonna move forward, ideally up on the baseline. That's like a good barometer. If you can get up to the baseline, then you know you can take the initiative. And then you are going to hit this next shot. It's gonna be a shot that stretches the counterpuncher off the court. And if they're way back here, they're gonna have a long way to go to get to that ball. And you can note it, and you'll notice this is on the shield side, because of course we now want to hang out over here and set up the red zone for the rest of the exchange. So that is how trench warfare works. Push back, don't allow the counterpuncher to counterpunch, force them to take the initiative. That gives you the opportunity, you know, when they open the door, it kind of actually gives you the opportunity to counterpunch, frankly, and then that sets up the red zone. Approaching against the counterpuncher. So there's a couple plays you can use. The first one is the bulldozer, and from the red zone here, let's say you have a short ball on your sword. Remember that the counterpuncher is often going to be trying to cover the open court. They just naturally look for that. So you're going to drive the ball back at the shield here, trying to get him to turn around like that, and you're going to follow this to net. Now, chances are, if you're coming from the baseline to the net, you might be a couple steps behind the service line in this case, and that's fine. What you want to do with that volley is actually, whoops, wrong color. You want to volley it right back here again. And you'll also, again, get the counterpuncher probably stopping and turning around again. And often in this situation, when you hit that volley behind, they're going to stop, and then that next shot is going to be a weak lob. So that's what you should look for here, is a weak lob from, you're going to continue to close, a weak lob from the counterpuncher, and then that's the shot that you would hit finally into the open court to end the point. Another great approach play you can use is the newt. And this is great when the counterpuncher hits down the line towards your shield, and then you take your next shot as a slice, and it's going to be cross court, but it's going to be short and low. And what you're looking for is the counterpuncher to move forward and try and dig that ball off their shoelaces. And it's going to be off the shield side. So you hit that slice, you follow it to net, and then you're expecting the counterpuncher to hit that ball up. It's going to be rising above the net, and you're perfectly positioned to hit that next volley down. You can hit it in the open court, or you can hit it right back at them. And if you hit it right back at them, just try and aim it at their feet. But either way, you are going to be in the driver's seat. When a counterpuncher gets a short ball and is coming to net, they love to use a play called the layup. And that's where they try and get you on the run off the court so that their volley is an easy volley into the open court. Counterpunchers don't have the best volleys in the world, so they like to have really big targets to aim to. So let's start by saying that the villain, the counterpuncher, is in the red zone against you. You leave a short ball hanging, they step in, they will try and hit to the open court and get you on the run and force you to come up with a great passing shot. So the first type of passing shot I'd recommend is called the Big Dipper. Because this is on the sword over here, your better shot, probably your forehand, more topspin, you want to dip that ball over here. So you're basically aiming kind of, deep, I guess you could say, in the service box, but you're trying to get the ball to dip down so that the counterpuncher has to hit a half volley or a volley up, and that allows you to close and then pass them with the next shot. Now, another option in this situation is to hit probably my all-time favorite passing shot, which is the parachute. Great shot in doubles. If you have got the doubles playbook, you know I talk about it all the time. But what the parachute is, imagine you got this tennis ball here and there's like a little parachute on it and it's sort of like floating down like that. So you're going to hit a high arcing shot. It's not a lob, but it is going to be high over the shield shoulder. So it might get over the shield shoulder, that's great. But if villain hits it, pretty much nobody at your level is going to have a good backhand overhead. So that ball is 100% of the time, and you'll be shocked when you start using it. Like literally 100% of the time, it's going to come right here on the intersection of the center line and the service line. So then you can just move here and hit a real simple passing shot. So I would definitely recommend you use the parachute if you don't have it in your repertoire yet. Now let's say the counterpuncher approaches to your shield. And remember, the counterpuncher loves the layup. They want to get you on the run. So when they approach at your shield, it'll probably be when you've hit down the line, haven't hit a great shot, they can step in. And then whether they hit a sword or a shield, they're going to try and get you on the run to your shield. So in a situation like this, it's tough because the shield is just not it's not your best shot. So your options are more limited. And you can do two things. One is Cloud City, and Cloud City is your classic, like really, really high lob. And you can actually try hitting it even higher than you might normally do, particularly if you're on the dead run. Just a really high shot. You're just trying to get it deep. Ideally over here, but literally just anywhere deep is kind of what you're going for so that you can get back in the court, get some depth, and then defend their next shot. Or what you can do, which is a great shot, is the Hulk Smash. And so this is where you're just going to blast it right at the counterpuncher, and you just want to force them to hit a reflex volley. You're just coming at them with pace, and you just want to see if they can handle it. You're looking for them to pop it up, and in this case, a pop up here would be on your sword. That's going to be a pretty reasonable passing shot. Your target, you basically want to aim for the center net strap. Obviously, you want to aim above the net, but when you aim for this target here, in your shield, it's going to tail cross court into villain's shield. So this is just a general target to aim for. Hulk Smash, not super precise, so you're not trying to put it on a dime, but if you aim here, it'll typically get over to the shield, force them to pop the ball up, and that gives you a look at a passing shot. Serving against the aggressive baseliner, you want to use serve +1. And in the deuce court, your standard pattern is going to be serving at the shield. You want the ball to come back through the middle of the court so that you can shift around and hit your next shot through the court and continue to attack the shield. Remember, serve +1, you're stacking the strength of your serve and the strength of your forehand, your sword, and attacking the shield in this case. And then you've quickly gotten yourself to the red zone and you're able to keep the ball away from the aggressive baseliner's big weapon. Now, one thing you can do if you've got the serve is also slide it out wide. This is something Federer does all the time because when you get the aggressive baseliner off the court, ball is going to be coming back cross court, and then you have more real estate to hit into on the shield side, and they're on the dead run. So that is one thing to consider and one thing to try out, particularly if you've got a good serve out wide. On the ad court, serve +1 again. you're going out wide at the shield, and then you're gonna slide over so that most balls are going to be, they're coming cross court. You want most balls to be on your sword so that you can hit your next shot back cross court and immediately get yourself into the red zone. Returning against the aggressive baseliner. So you'll want to use a play called return +1. And this is where the return goes right back at the server, right back at the aggressive baseliner. You want to take the sidelines out of it. You want to just kind of aim for a big target. You want to stick it, but obviously when you're returning serve, you might not be as precise as normal. Now, what you do want to try and do is aim for whichever side has the bigger take back. And that might seem a little counterintuitive, particularly against an aggressive baseliner who has a great sword, but when somebody has landed and they're coming out of their service motion and they're standing on or inside the baseline, if you hit a shot that pushes them back, they're going to be back like this, and they're not going to be able to lean into the ball and hit a good shot. So whichever side has the bigger backswing, often it's the forehand, aim for that, and the next shot, they are hopefully going to cough up something simple here, and you can move around and set up the red zone. You can hit your sword over at the shield and then maneuver yourself into the red zone to take control of the point. On the ad court, same thing, return +1, drive that return towards whichever side has the bigger backswing. And because you're in the ad court, the ball is probably gonna tail back cross court. If you go towards the sword, it'll be more in the middle, but obviously if you go over the shield, it's more likely to come back on a diagonal. Either way, you don't have to move as far to get yourself into the red zone with your next shot and keep that ball away from Villain's sword. Rallying against the aggressive baseliner. So one of the plays you can use is home base. And this is a great play because it forces the aggressive baseliner to take all the risk to attack you. So to set the stage, we've got a cross-court, sword-to-sword rally, not the greatest situation to find yourself in against an aggressive baseliner. And you can see the area of the court you're giving away is a little bit smaller than normal because the aggressive baseliners can take that ball down the line. And it's something you need to be aware of, right? So the way home base works is very simple. If the ball crosses the plane of your body and is an outside ground stroke, you have to send it back cross court. But if it doesn't cross the plane of your body and it's an inside ground stroke, then you can change the direction of the tennis ball. Now you might say to yourself, well, Will, in this exchange here, I might want to go down the line, get the ball away from the aggressive baseliner's sword. That's real tough to do. If they're hitting aggressive shots, it's probably smarter to just keep the rally going, even though they're going to burn you down the line sometime, versus taking a high risk shot where you're going to make an error, or you could leave it sitting and they're going to step in and put that ball away. So keep this rally going, and then when you get an inside ground stroke, that's when you can change the direction of the ball, and this would certainly be a case where you would want to go at the aggressive baseliner's shield here. This, of course, would be an outside ground stroke. You would shift over, and ideally, you would get an inside ground stroke, and you could set up the red zone. But if the ball comes back and crosses that plane, then you got to send it back cross court per the rule of home base. And if you hit a good shot, then you can slide over a little bit more, and then hopefully it makes it more likely that your next shot would be an inside ground stroke, an inside sword in this case, and then you can set up the red zone. Approaching against the aggressive baseliner. So an amazing play to use here is the newt. And let's set the stage by saying you're in a cross-court sword-to-sword rally. I said in the home base video that often the aggressive baseliner likes to take that sword down the line. So let's say they try that, but they don't hit the greatest shot. You can move forward. It's a short ball. You're inside the baseline. What you'll want to do here with your shield is hit a short, low slice that is over on Villain's shield here. So you want to pull him forward with that newt, and then you're going to close the net, of course. And from here, the aggressive baseliner is going to have to hit up on the tennis ball. They can't take a huge cut at it. They're going to have to dig it off their shoelaces, and you're perfectly positioned in this case to hit down and end the point. Another great time to use the newt is when you are in a cross-court shield-to-shield rally. the aggressive baseliner gets it to your shield but hits the ball short, you can step inside the baseline, then you hit the newt down the line. Now the time you would want to do this is when you know that the aggressive baseliner has a really extreme forehand grip, because it's hard to hit those shots that are really low, that are down below the knees. So you would continue to close here, you would close, position yourself here, but you're gonna get a lot of outright misses in this case because they're gonna shank it, they won't be able to get it up and down. It's just tough to hit really low slices if Villain has an extreme grip. So look for that during the warm-up, and if you see that, then the down the line newt in this situation is a great way to get to net. Aggressive baseliners love to use a play called the bulldozer when they're coming to net. This is where they just rip an approach shot and follow it in, which obviously makes sense because aggressive baseliners love to rip their groundies. So if the aggressive baseliner is approaching out of their sword corner and they're approaching at your sword, what you can do first is use your standard passing shot, which is just called thread the needle, because you're kind of trying to thread the needle past the aggressive baseliner, obviously inside the single sideline and not hitting it long. So that's your standard passing shot, the first one you can try. Another one that's great and frankly preferable in my opinion in this situation is the Big Dipper, because it's on your sword. You can hit with more topspin and you can try and get the ball above the net, but then have it dive down and be a low volley or half volley for the aggressive baseliner. This one's great because you're less likely to miss it, right? You're not worried about the sideline, hitting it deep. Not super worried about the net even, because you're just, you can hit with some clearance as long as you can get the ball to dive. And when they're approaching, they're gonna be behind the service line. So if you land it kind of in the middle of the service line, that'll be down at their feet. So this one is a higher percentage shot that you're gonna hit, and then you force them to hit up. You can close on that next shot, which hopefully won't be a good one, and then you have a pretty easy passing shot. Now, let's say the aggressive baseliner uses the bulldozer against you out of the red zone. They're in the red zone, you leave a ball short, they step in, and then they rip it at your shield. You can also use thread the needle here. It's obviously tough because, this is the area of the court you don't really want to aim for because you're likely to miss. So you got to kind of thread it past Villain in this case. But, because they're coming out of the red zone, there is open court over here. They're coming out of their shield corner. There is open court you can aim for. So that would be one option. Probably a better one would be the Hulk Smash, where you're going to hit it right basically at Villain as they're approaching. Maybe aim for the center strap. Obviously, aim above the center strap. But this is a pretty good generic target where the ball is going to be moving cross court on a diagonal, so it'll be a shield volley for them, the weaker side. But this is where you're just going at them with pace and trying to get them to hit a reflex volley that they pop up. And then most pop-ups in this area will be on your sword. You can step in and pass them on the next shot. Serving against the serve and volleyer, serve +1. And you want to take that serve out wide if you got the wide serve, because you want to stretch the serve and volleyer off the court. And then the ball's going to be coming back cross court like this. You're going to shift around and your next shot is into the open court. The goal is to get the serve and volleyer moving sideways so that they cannot move forward, right? And you're going to shift over, and then you have set up the red zone in just 2 shots. Ad court, you want to use a play called coast to coast. So you're going to take your serve out wide. You're going to stretch the serve and volleyer off the court. And a lot of times you might be tempted to just slide over and immediately set up the red zone. The problem you can run into here against the serve and volleyer is it gives them a chance to move forward and try and get to the net when you hit the ball right back at them. So instead, you'd still slide over, but then your next shot is going to be into the open court over here. So the reason, you might be able to tell the reason this play is called coast to coast is you're literally moving them from one coast to the next. And so then you get the serve volleyer over here. Again, you're moving them side to side so they can't move forward and back. Ball ideally comes back cross court, and then you take that third shot on the sword back at the shield, get them to move back over. Oops, we'll go the correct color. Get them to move back over this way. And now you've set up the red zone, but you've done it where you have moved the serve and volleyer back and forth and prevented them from moving forward. Returning against the serve and volleyer, you want to use a play called the Lleyton, named after Lleyton Hewitt. One of the pros we've worked with is Pat Rafter, and Pat was one of the greatest serve and volleyers of all time, two-time US Open champ. And I asked Pat, I said, who was the toughest returner you ever faced? And it wasn't Andre Agassi, it was Lleyton Hewitt. Because what Lleyton would do, Pat would hit the serve, and Pat's coming in behind that serve. Lleyton would hit the return right back at Pat, but he would land the return at Pat's feet. That would force Pat to hit up on the next ball. It wouldn't be a great volley, and then Lleyton would hit a passing shot. So the simple way you want to think about it, this is what Pat told me. He just said, returns at your feet, the next one passes you. So whether you're in the deuce court or the ad court, you hit your return at the serve and volleyer's feet, and then you pass on the next shot. Rallying against the serve and volleyer, so one of the rally plays you can use is trench warfare. What you want to do is you want to push the serve and volleyer back off the baseline. You know, I said that the serve and volleyer is a north-south player. They're trying to move forward, get to the net. So you actually want to push them further back into the north, if possible. So the way you do that is you hit a high loopy ball that pushes back, gets the serve and volleyer back into their trench. You would then back up into your trench as well. So they just have, the serve and volleyer just has a lot of real estate to cover to try and get to the net. So from back here, you're gonna wait for the serve and volleyer to try and generate an angle. Very difficult to do back here. So if they hit, let's say, a cross-court shot here at your shield, that gives you an opportunity to move out of your trench, and then you now have an angle where you can now stretch the serve and volleyer off the court, and then obviously you would hang out in this position and set up the red zone. One caveat to this play, because you're facing a serve and volleyer, is sometimes they might, you know, the serve and volleyer might hit a shot like this and then start to approach. And again, they have a lot of real estate to cover. So instead of hitting an outright passing shot, this would be a situation where you might kind of use the Lleyton return play, the same concept that's behind it. You move over here, your shot should just be right at the serve and volleyer, but then bounce it, you know, get it to bounce right at their feet so that they have to hit up, and then you can pass on the next shot. Rallying against the serve and volleyer, another play you can use is home base. So the way home base works, if you haven't seen one of the other videos so far, is you've got this plane coming out of your body, and if the ball crosses the plane, it's an outside ground stroke. All outside ground strokes go back cross court. That's the rule, right? You got to take it back cross court. An inside ground stroke, then you can decide to change direction of the ball. And I've also blocked off a part of the court that the serve and volleyer is not going to really be covering, and here's the part of the court you would not really be covering against the serve and volleyer. So the reason you want to use home base against this type of player, they're trying to move forward. So when you're giving them a steady diet of outside ground strokes, makes it difficult for them to hit a quality approach shot. Again, if they hit it here, it's not even an approach shot, it's just sort of an outright winner. And changing the direction of the ball, maybe they hit a couple good approach shots, but what's more likely is a ball through the middle. That gives you an inside ground stroke, and then you can change direction, and you have a pretty easy passing shot because there's so much open court exposed. What you don't want to do is take outside ground strokes, try and change direction, and then you leave a ball hanging, because this is the situation where, okay, now the serve and volleyer can step into the ball, they can hit a quality approach shot to anywhere in the court, and they're better positioned, so a passing shot is not really as easy for you to do. So you want to make it as difficult as possible for the serve and volleyer to hit a quality approach shot, get to net. From your standpoint, if you want to be, if you want to work your way to the red zone, if you get this rally like this, when the aggressive baseliner gives you an inside ground stroke, then you can change direction. You can hit it over here. Then you can slide over and try and establish the red zone where you've got balls on your sword hitting at villain's shield. Approaching the net against the serve and volleyer, there are a couple plays you can use. The first is called the layup, and you would use this when you find yourself in an outside shield-to-shield rally. The serve and volleyer is going to try and come down the line, not going to hit a great shot. The ball will be right around here on your sword, and you can now hit that ball cross court, and you're going to hit an angle approach shot because you want to get the serve and volleyer off the court. You want them stretched off the court, hustling for that ball. You follow it to net over here, and then any passing shot attempt is going to be I don't want to say it's going to be an easy volley, but you have a lot of court to work with. So you don't have to hit a great volley. That's why we call it the layup, because you don't have to hit a great volley to win the point. You just sort of have to steer it over here, and they're so far off the court, they're not going to get to it. So this is a great play to use, not only against the serve volleyer, but just if your volleys are just a little bit shaky and you're still trying to figure out how do I get to the net and be aggressive. The second approach play you can use is called the bulldozer, and this would be a situation where you've got the red zone. So you're going to drive, so let's say you get a short ball, you're going to drive that ball back at the serve and volleyer's shield, and you're going to follow it to the net. Now, if they hit a poor passing shot, you can just volley that ball into the open court, points over. If they hit a decent shot back at you and you can't put away the volley, what I would recommend is hitting that next volley in the exact same location, because what they might expect is a ball in the open court. A lot of times they'll be kind of sliding this way to cover it. You'll force them to stop and turn around. That's the classic hit behind, so they're kind of inching this way and they have to stop and hit a shield again, turn around, hit a shield. What you're very likely to get in this case is a weak lob like that. And when you do, you'll be well positioned to hit that overhead into the open court to finish the point. Serving against Dr. Feelgood, we want to use serve +1 both on the deuce court and the ad court. We'll start with the deuce court first. You want to stretch villain off the court. Ball is going to come back cross court, shift around, and then you want to drive the ball through the court. You've stretched off the court, now you want to push them back. One of the concepts, one of the ways I like to think about it is operate in contrast, right? Stretch them off the court, then push them back, or push them back, then pull them in. Always operate in those contrasts to keep them off balance. So this would be where they're moving back to hit their shield. That's going to be a ball, they pop up, you can step in, take control of the point. On the ad court, it's going to be the same deal. You want to serve off the court like this, stretch them off the court, and then your next shot is that same shot that pushes back. You've got them off the court, then you want to push them back. Ideally, they're moving this way to cover the open court, so they actually have to kind of stop and turn around to get to that. So you're taking advantage of both hitting behind and pushing them back. And again, you're looking for that popped up slice. Might still have a little bit of spin on it, but it's a ball that you should be able to judge. You'll have some time. You can step in and rip the next ball. Serving against the all-court player, serve +1. Now, our serve location is quite important. We want to start by going at the shield because all-court players tend to have great forehands. And if your serve isn't a big serve, let's say, then you want to go for the weaker side so that you don't get hurt. If you don't have a big serve, a great slider off the court, then you can really get stung if you go over here. So not to say that this isn't a good option if you've got the serve, but if you don't, high percentage, keep it at the shield, don't get hurt. Slide over, the angles here, the ball is going to come back through the middle of the court, and then the next shot, you're going to drive at the shield. So you're going from here to here, pushing back, and then you're immediately setting up the red zone here. This, if you look at like what Rafael Nadal does against Federer or against all righties, he pretty much, I don't want to say exclusively, but most of the serves go at the shield. He's just playing the percentages, playing the geometry to try and set up. He's obviously a lefty, but he's trying to set up a forehand on his next shot. Ad court, you're hitting your serve out wide. You're continuing to attack the shield. You're stretching them off the court, and then you're going to slide over to hopefully get a sword on your next shot. Obviously, expect the ball back cross court, and then you're going to drive that deep at the shield. Hopefully, you get the all-court player off balance, moving this way, and then they have to turn around and hit a backhand. You've hit behind and pushed them back a little bit, so you get a weak shot that allows you to control the middle of the court on your sword, and you have set up the red zone. Rallying against the all-court player. Another play you can use is trench warfare. Got the term from World War I, where you had these battles of attrition, both armies in the trench, and once you're back, you're very hard to advance and mount an assault on the other team that is firmly entrenched in their trench. So what you're gonna do is hit high balls, kind of high arcing balls. You can hit like heavy topspin, right? But you're just trying to push villain back, push the all-court player back into their trench. Because from back here, you're cutting down on the angles, you're limiting what the all-court player can do, you're limiting their ability to take advantage of their talents. If they've got great drop shots, harder to do it from back here. If they got a great slice in general, it's hard to keep that thing super low from way back here. And so you're gonna continue to hit these high balls that keep villain back in the trench, ideally on the shield side, and you're waiting for them to try and attack. You're waiting for them to go for an angle, and then that is when you come out of your trench, you step forward, and you try and take it early, and then from here, you now have the angle where you can stretch the all-court player off the court. And because they're all the way back in their trench here, they have a long way to go to get to this tennis ball. They have to go all the way over here to get it. If they're up on the baseline, then they might only have to go there. But in the trench, they really are going to be way off the court. And then obviously from this situation, you have now firmly established the red zone. You're going to be in the driver's seat for this point. Rallying against the all-court player, one of the plays you want to use is home base. Now, if you don't know how home base works, it's a very simple rule. If the ball crosses the plane of your body and it's an outside ground stroke, you hit the ball back cross court. But if the ball comes into your body, doesn't cross the plane, it's an inside ground stroke, then you are allowed to change direction of the tennis ball. And this play is great because you don't take any risk during the point. You force villain to take the risk, and that allows you to counterattack. And that's particularly important against an all-court player because if you hit a bad shot, you leave it hanging, then because they're so talented, they're really gonna make you pay. So you want to make sure that villain is hitting low percentage shots. They're still gonna get some of them, but you wanna make sure that the odds, the statistics are in your favor. So if you're giving the all-court player a steady diet of outside swords, sure, they're gonna burn you down the line a couple times, but this is still a low percentage shot. They're gonna make a lot of errors. So in this situation, you would continue to go cross court until you would get an inside ground stroke. In this instance, I would change direction of the ball. You obviously can now put the ball over in this part of the tennis court. That's exactly what I would do. Hit it over towards the shield, and then you are going to slide over and, where'd my green pen go? Oh, here it is. You would slide over, and ideally you would set up the red zone, but if the ball comes back cross court, then you just send it back cross court. And if you hit a quality shot, I would scoot over a little bit and try and set up the red zone. That ultimately is what you're looking for with home base, with any play, but certainly with home base. But home base, you do it very methodically, playing the percentages, make the all-court player take all the risk. Approaching against the all-court player, want to use the bulldozer. We want to go at the shield, the weaker side, and we really want to keep the ball away from the sword because all-court players, a lot of them have that hooking, dipping, passing shot. They got the Big Dipper, probably have the parachute too, so it's just much more dangerous to hit the ball over here. We're just going to approach with power at the shield. If they're able to burn us down the line here, good for them, low percentage shot. We're going to continue to close. If we get a low volley that isn't a put-away volley into the open court, you volley it right back at the shield because any player, but certainly an all-court player, is going to expect a volley over here, so you can then have an opportunity to hit behind. They're covering the open court, you hit behind. This next shot, almost always going to be a lob. It might be a weak passing shot attempt, but in either case, that is when you hit to the open court to end the point. The all-court player loves to use the newt when they come to the net. So they're going to hit a short, low slice that pulls you into the court, and the all-court player's goal is to get you to hit above the net so that they can continue to close and put the next volley away. They're going to hit down on that next volley. You're out of position. So that's going to be a tough situation for you. So to counteract this, you want to use a shot called the preacher, which really is just the newt. And you're just going to hit it right back at the all-court player, and you want the ball bouncing around their feet. In the diagram, you can see what we've drawn. It looks like this. Here's Villain. They hit the newt. You hit the exact same shot back at them. The reason it's called the preacher is because Bob and Mike Bryan had this shot preached to them in doubles, so they just started calling it the preacher. One caveat or one thing to keep in mind, learned this from Bob, is that you want your shot to kind of scoot through the court. You don't want it to sit up, because then the all-court player or anybody can just take a step back and rip it. So that ball needs to still be moving through the court so that they don't have an opportunity to hit a ground stroke. They have to hit a shoelace volley. So you basically just want to aim for a target window, 1 or 2 feet above the net, and put a little something on it so it scoots through the court and becomes a tough volley for the all-court player. You continue to close, then you get to hit down on your next volley and end the point. All right, so the first thing we got to understand when we play a southpaw is that the sword and the shield dynamic has completely changed. And this is the most critical thing to understand, because you now have the sword cross-court at the shield on both sides. So if you're a righty, your sword is cross-court at the shield, but obviously the lefty has the sword cross-court at the shield as well. Now, the reason this is critical to understand is because you now have strength cross-court at the weakness, 82.5 feet. When you're playing a fellow righty, you only have 78 feet, higher net. If you hit it down the line and you don't hit a good shot, you're out of position. Well, none of that is the case now. And so there is a lot of benefit of just going cross-court at the other person's shield, but obviously the southpaw is going to want to do the exact same thing to you. But again, important to understand, because this changes how we construct all of our plays and how we attack the weakness of the southpaw. Serve +1 against the southpaw, you want to use serve +1, but because the sword and the shield are reversed, things are going to look a little bit different. First serve, go wide, stretch to the shield, and then most of the returns are going to come back cross-court. You might even shade a little bit towards the middle to get more swords in this case. Southpaw is going to have to cover the open court, and normally with serve +1, you would take that next ball here. But because the shield is over here now, as the southpaw is moving this way, you hit your next shot right back in the same direction. You might hit this one more through the court, and you're trying to get the southpaw to stop, turn around, and then back up to have to hit a shield. And the red zone in this case is a slightly different, right? So if you set it up, you're actually hitting a lot of outside swords, but it's your stronger shot. So this area of the court might be reduced a little bit, but this area of the court for the southpaw is going to be expanded, because the shield down the line is a lot tougher than the sword down the line for you, particularly because you're going strength to weakness, so you're going a big shot at the weaker side, whereas the weaker shot cross-court isn't going to stress your sword as much, so it's easier for you to redirect that thing down the line. Serve +1 in the ad court, you're going to start by attacking the shield. You're going to hit down the middle to attack the shield, and then you're looking for a return through the middle. You might even hold your position over here to turn more shields into swords, and then you're going to hit that next shot at the southpaw's shield. So if you hit a serve that pushes the southpaw back and then you get a ball through the middle of the court, it's perfectly fine to push back on the shield again, even though it's not going to be quite as effective because they're already back behind the court. the most important thing is to set up the red zone, which you would have done in those two shots. If the return comes over here more and you can generate an angle, great, go for it, but don't be obsessed with trying to hook that ball off the court when you don't really have the angle over here. Be content to just drive it deep, keep the southpaw back, and then get yourself in the red zone. You're gonna win most of those points. Returning against the southpaw, you'll want to use return +1. Take that return right back at the server, and you want to aim for the side with the bigger backswing, which could be the sword in this case. It's a little counterintuitive, but because the server is coming out of their motion, they're landing, they're right on the baseline, this is a great opportunity to rush them. And one of the ways to do that is when you aim for the side with the bigger backswing, that obviously takes more time to get through. So because they're forward in the court, you can really rush their even their sword. And this is something that Novak Djokovic actually does against Rafael Nadal all the time. It's super effective. It's this exact same configuration. Righty down here, lefty up here. Djokovic goes right back at Rafa and aims for the forehand because the forehand's got a slightly bigger backswing than Rafa's backhand, which is more compact. It's really effective, even though it's quite counterintuitive. And then your next shot, if you can get it as a sword, great. If it's a shield, not the end of the world, but try and drive that thing at the shield to set up the red zone in your favor. Ad quarter, same thing, return +1. You're gonna go right back at the server and figure out which side has the bigger backswing. And then from here, you should expect a lot of balls through the middle of the court. You'll recover towards the middle, but again, maybe cheat a little bit that way to get most of the shots on your sword over here. And then that next shot is gonna be a shot that you drive through the backhand, the shield side of the court, try and push back. It's tough from over here to generate an angle, so don't worry about it. Just try and hit a heavy ball that pushes the southpaw back. If their shot off of your return comes over here, then you can generate an angle, but feel free, be perfectly happy pushing back with that next shot, and then you can continue to slide over, and now you've gotten yourself to the red zone. Rallying against the southpaw. So one of the plays you can use is the battering ram. And the battering ram is kind of like the 2-1 when you're facing a righty because you're already in the red zone. So now it's just a matter of kind of keeping your foot on the gas and you should win the point. So what you're gonna do is with your first shot, your first sword, you are going to push back like that. So get the southpaw off the baseline, push them back like that. Your next shot, you'll then stretch them off the court. And because you've already pushed them back, they now have further to travel to get to that ball that stretches them off the court. And then that next shot that comes through, if it's over here, you'll want to move around. You want to make sure you're hitting a sword as often as possible. Southpaw obviously has to honor this end of the court. So they're going to be hustling this way. So you can either go to the open court, you're going to win most of those, or you can hit behind and you're going to win most of those. If they take the second shot, come down the line and you have a shield, then that's an easy angle cross court for a winner. But that is the battering ram. It's 3 shots basically, push back, stretch off the court, and then you can decide to hit behind or hit into the open court. Either way, you are going to win those points. The Mexican standoff. So this is a rally play you can use against the southpaw when you've got this configuration of shield to shield down the line. So you can see there's this exchange, just shield to shield going down the line, kind of a weird exchange that you rarely see. You'll see this actually a lot with Djokovic and Rafa. They just kind of do this, go back and forth. And then to take the initiative, you can do one of 2 things. One, if you get a shield you can attack, you can either drive it, you can hit it deep, or you can hit a newt. So what you're trying to do is either just get the southpaw on the run, stretch him, or pull him into the court. So that's one of 2 options. And then if you hit a quality shot, then this down the line does not become an option, right? That's an outside ground stroke. We're not worried about that. You would hold your position and then you would be set up to drive it over there and set up the red zone. Then you could shift over, but you'd be in control of the point. So that's one option. It starts with a quality shield cross court. The other is you can move around a shot that is intended for your shield, turn it into a sword, and then your shot would be a drive, right? You'd attack into the open court, but if you hit a good shot, you'd do the same thing. You would just hang out here, look for that inside ground stroke on the next shot, don't worry about that, and then you're in control of the point. Approaching against the southpaw, you want to use the bulldozer. So from the red zone here, if you get a short ball somewhere in the middle of the court here, it's important for you to first move around so that you upgrade from a shield to a sword, and then you drive that thing through the court back at the southpaw's shield over here. And from this position, you don't have too far to go to get to the right recovery point to handle the ensuing passing shot. So if the southpaw hits a shot that isn't an outright put away volley for you, what you'll want to do is volley that right back into the same location. Keep it at the shield. You might be tempted to go to the open court, but don't do that because the southpaw is going to be looking for the ball over here. They might be sliding this way, and then they have to turn around and hit a shield. So the net effect is they're moving this way, they have to stop, turn around. That shot is very likely to be some kind of weak lob that you should be able to put away, or just like a weak passing shot. But in either case, you would want to volley that or hit an overhead into the open court. One thing to keep in mind, because the shield is over here, you might get a parachute. So that's something to keep an eye out for, that high kind of lofting ball over your shield shoulder. So that is something they're capable of pulling off. Keep an eye out for it, but if you execute this play effectively, then you're going to win most of these points. You don't have to worry about it too much. Southpaws love to use the bulldozer when they come to net. So if they get a sword in the middle of the court, a short ball, one option is they could drive it towards your sword. And in that case, the first passing shot option you have is thread the needle. You know, if they're set up for a sword, they might be leaving a little bit, they might have shaded into their shield corner. So you got a little bit of a window here, but they're coming strength. Even though it's your strength, this can be a dicey proposition. Another option is to use the Big Dipper and get that ball to bounce low at their feet. Then hopefully they pop it up and you got to look at a passing shot on the next ball. When the southpaw uses the bulldozer at your shield, it is typically out of the red zone, so you will have left a ball short. They've stepped in. They're ripping this at your shield here. One great option, because you have the shields on the same side of the court, is to use the parachute. So that high ball, it's not really a lob, it's just high. Like imagine putting a parachute on the ball, it's slowly floating down. You're just trying to get it over the shield shoulder of the southpaw. That next shot is pretty much always going to come back through the middle, land right at the intersection of the service line and the center service line. You can step in, you've got a sword, you can put that ball into the open court. So that's the first option. Second option is the Hulk smash. You would just blast this thing right back at the southpaw. So typically I say aim for the center net strap, just a very general target. The Hulk smash is not the most precise shot. In this case, it's going to be tailing over towards the sword, so it's not quite as good as when you were doing it against a fellow righty, because then it would be on the shield. But at the end of the day, this is an imprecise shot. The main thing is to come with pace and just try and rush and pressure the southpaw and get them to pop up that shot. Anything in here will be on your sword, and then you can pass on the next ball.